Welcome back to the Jake Asman Show on the SportsMap Radio Network.
Presented by Rocket Mortgage. Need a mortgage that fits your life? Rocket can.
Live from the O'Reilly Auto Parts Studios, here's Jake Asman.
Off we go here on a Saturday. This is the Jake Asman Show, hanging out with you. Lot to cover with the NBA playoffs. Let's start with what was an absolute beatdown last night in Denver. The Phoenix Suns dominated the Nuggets. Final score was 116-102. I think that does the final score justice, though. I don't even think that really emphasizes how poor of a performance that was by the Denver Nuggets. They were just dismantled. Chris Paul dominated this basketball game. Chris Paul went out there and had his way with the Nuggets as he's had really throughout the series. You know, at one point after a Chris Paul steal and then made bucket, it was 102-85. And you look at where the Suns are right now, up 3-0, it's over. See you later to the Denver Nuggets. You know, you have your MVP in Nikola Jokic. He did all he could with 32 points and 20 rebounds, 10 assists. But it's not enough. They do not have enough to counter what the Suns have. And what's fascinating about a team like Phoenix and a team like Utah, and we'll talk about the Jazz in a moment here, is all the talk in the regular season was about those two teams only being regular season good. We've had that in the past, where you've had some teams that have these great regular seasons and then they flounder in the playoffs. You look at the Jazz and you look at the Suns, I think those teams have now proven that they are way more than just regular season good. They're bona fide contenders. And you look at what Phoenix has, the depth they have, the amount of people that could have a good game on a nightly basis, the way Booker has ascended in his first career opportunity in the playoffs. This is a team that is as good as it gets right now. And they're playing at such a high level. And I'd be shocked if Denver wins the game. I think we're getting a sweep. So ultimately, what does it all mean for Denver? I mean, look, we knew losing Jamal Murray was going to be tough for them, and I think we're starting to see it here that they just don't have enough. They don't have enough. You know, Jokic could give you 32, 20, and 10, and you're going to lose 102 to or 116 to 102. Come on. And it was fascinating because after game 2, where the Nuggets were dominated by the Suns, Mike Malone, the head coach of the Nuggets, called his team out, said they quit. How often do you hear an NBA coach that honest nowadays with his team? It's all like buddy and positive energy. He called his team out. And I was curious to see how that would go, if that would work. Because it's rare you see an NBA coach actually be critical of his team publicly. And he was far more than just critical. I mean, he said they quit. And Mike Malone calls out his team after game 2. And it clearly did not work. Because they went out there in game 3 and just did not have a chance. Now they're down 0-3, and I think they're getting swept. Mike Malone, however, would like to not see his team get swept.
And I know for myself, I can't speak for anyone else, the last thing I want to see is the Phoenix Suns pushing a broom across that court after game 4.
Well, guess what, Mike? I don't know if your team has enough. Also, I like calling him Mike now because he was such a, he was such an ass to, I think it was Cassie Hubbard was the reporter on ESPN who was doing an in-game interview and said, Coach Mike Malone, and he's like, it's not Mike, it's Michael. Like flipped out on her in the middle of an interview. Like if you have a problem with someone calling you Mike, when, oh, by the way, the Denver Nuggets media guide, I think refers to you as Mike Malone, then talk to her afterwards. Or have PR let her know after the game. Hey, he likes to go by Mike on the air just for future references. But he belittled her in that spot, and since then I'm going to continue to call him Mike because that was just wrong. And Mike's team's down 0-3. Mike's team, I don't think has a chance. The Nuggets are a nice story. It's unfortunate what happened with Jamal Murray, but we're just seeing Chris Paul make such a difference, and I hope he stays healthy because this is his best chance to win a title. I know a couple of years ago, right here in Houston, Chris Paul's hamstring prevented a lot of Rockets fans from thinking they were going to win that series and then beat Cleveland. I get all that. But this Suns team is loaded. They're deeper than that Rockets team from a couple of years ago. This was Chris Paul after the win last night, calling it satisfying.
Man, it's very satisfying. We knew that this was going to be an emotional game for them with Joker being presented the MVP trophy for the game. And we just kept talking about trying to withstand their runs. It's a good win for us.
And they're now one win away from moving on to the conference finals. You got to tip your cap to Chris Paul. When the Rockets traded him, it looked like Chris Paul was clearly on the decline. Now, that trade in hindsight looks awful, and you could argue, Jake, they should not have done that because Russ didn't make them that much better, if at all, and you traded away all your draft capital. I get all that. But I watched Chris Paul a lot up close that season, and I saw a guy that was declining. I saw a guy that was not as explosive as he was in previous years. For him to then go to the Thunder and take that team to the playoffs, and now go out there and take the Suns within a game of going to the conference finals in his first year there. It really is amazing what he's become. He's 36 years old, and there's reports that he's going to opt out of his contract. If I would have told a Rockets fan that a couple of years after you trade Paul, he was going to be opting out of that quote-unquote albatross of a contract, you would have been shocked. You would have been like, no way. Chris Paul's going to opt out of a contract that's going to pay him about $44 million next year. But the reports are he is. And someone's probably going to give him a 2-year extension. Maybe 3 if a team's really desperate for Chris Paul. Unbelievable. He's playing that well. And he's elevating that team so much and giving them every chance to go far in the playoffs. And, that's what the Suns were missing. They had a good young team, and then Chris Paul comes in and has that leadership impact and just gives them an ability to close. Like, if you need a big shot late, Chris Paul, that mid-range jumper is coming, and he's going to hit it because he always does in big spots. So just a dominant performance for the Suns last night. That series is over. Then you look at tonight's game. The series between the Jazz and the Clippers ships back to L.A., and I have no reason to think the Clippers are going to go out there and win this game later. But obviously, needless to say, Jake, they better, because if they go down 0-3, it's over. The Clippers are a tough team to figure out, man. They finally get that road win in Game 7 against an inferior team talent-wise. And I thought, all right, maybe that gives them some momentum. Then they go out there in Games 1 and 2 and get beat. Which Clippers team is going to show up tonight? That's the question. If Kawhi Leonard and Paul George have any pride, they win this game. I mean, give it something. But you look at the Jazz, and they have stayed true to what they are. They've stayed true to their balanced scoring attack, the depth that they possess. I mean, you look at their Game 2 win over the Clippers. Donovan Mitchell has reached superstar status in the game. He went from a really good player, star, all-star. He's a superstar now. You talk about young stars taking that ascension. We've seen that with Donovan Mitchell. He is a superstar. 37 big points in Game 2. Then you have Rudy Gobert, the defensive player of the year, grabbing 12 rebounds, blocking 3 shots. Bojan Bogdanovic scoring 16 points. Held Kawhi to 1 of 4 shooting in the 4th. And then what do the Jazz have better than most? Their bench. 6th man of the year candidate, Jordan Clarkson. 24 off the bench, 6 of 9 from 3. The Jazz are the most well-balanced team that's left in the NBA. And I questioned the Jazz. I'm not going to pretend like I didn't. I was like, it's Utah. Are they going to be legit? Are they going to be able to win big playoff games? You want to see it. You've seen it with some of these other star teams, right? We've seen it with the Lakers. We've seen it with KD and Harden and Kyrie. We've seen it with, the Clippers to a certain extent because of Kawhi doing what he did with San Antonio and with Toronto. You wondered about a team like Utah, the number 1 seed in the West. But so far through 2 games, they've been true to themselves. And everyone's playing their part. But Donovan Mitchell has become a superstar this postseason. I don't think that could be emphasized enough. Remember when Shaquille O'Neal told Donovan Mitchell on live television that, quote, he doesn't have what it takes to take his game to the next level? Since that moment, Donovan Mitchell's averaging 28 points per game in the postseason, and when he's played, they're 6-0. Remember Utah lost Game 1 to Memphis? Donovan didn't play. Since then, they haven't lost. So it's almost like Shaq was challenging Donovan Mitchell Because since then, he's been the best player you could argue in the playoffs. He's been incredible. And it pains me as a fan of the New York Knicks that Donovan Mitchell is not a Knick, because the Knicks had to take Frank Ntilikina over Donovan Mitchell. What a pick that was by the great Phil Jackson clown. But we're watching a superstar unfold in Utah, and it's been fun to watch. Now, I'm not going to go as far as Stephen A. Smith went the other day on First Take and say that Donovan Mitchell's already the best player in Jazz history. I'm not going to go that far. We don't even know if Donovan Mitchell's going to play his whole career in Utah like Stockton and pretty much Karl Malone did till the very end. But you get the point. He's been sensational. And you look at Phoenix, you look at Utah. What's fascinating about both those teams is we questioned if they were regular season good. And they've been everything but regular season good. They have proven now that they are bona fide championship contenders out west. This is the Jake Asman Show right here on Sports Map Radio. If you want in on the NBA playoffs, 800-224-2004 is the number. You can follow me on Twitter at Jake Asman. That's Jake ASMAN. Tweet me your thoughts, your comments. We will read the best responses over the air. Coming up next, James Harden had a comment about Giannis Antetokounmpo a couple of years back. And a lot of people criticized Harden for making this comment. But you know what? After watching the Bucks in the playoffs the last couple of years, and specifically against James Harden's Nets, James Harden was right. We'll talk about that next here on the Jake Asman Show on Sports Map Radio.
Pharrell.
Coast to coast! I mean, honestly, how many times